Thank you very much for the University of Dresden for this invitation, and particularly to the organizers. In order to make my presentation more clear, I will share a PowerPoint. The title of my presentation, Latin America and the GDR, Artistic Networks Between the Cold War and the Dictatorships. First of all, I will eliminate my image. I would like to propose you kind of periodization I did concerning the relationships between Germany and Latin America. Are provisional materials for periodization. The first moment are the years before the Second World War, when many artists arrived from Germany escaping from Nazism, and some of them were even involved in anti-Nazi activities, as we will see at the end of this presentation. The second, the post-war years, when artists involved with Nazism, not necessarily Germans, but in connection with, arrived at Latin America. The third, the years of the Cold War, when some artists traveled to Eastern countries due to their links with the Communist Party. Some of them even wrote reports from the Communist Party. Young artists also were working for the Communist Party for youth formations, and even during dictatorships. In Argentina, the Communist Party Federation for Young People was called FEDE. The years of the Latin American dictatorships, when many artists from these three countries I will consider today, Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile, and others from Latin America went into exile in the Eastern countries. In this case, we will consider only East Germany, or establish relationship with German artists. And the last one, Eastern European artists exhibiting in Latin America. We will be focused on the last two cases. And I want to introduce in each case a short context about how were the relationships between, in this case, Uruguay, where Uruguay, after World War II, established relations, diplomatic relations with both Germanies. And it's also very frequent that members of the Communist Party are traveling to the GDR as well as other socialist countries. I highlight the Uruguayan case because before the time that concerned us, there is an artist, Maria Carmen Portela, who together with her husband, Gesualdo Sosa, that it was an active communist member of the party, and also that was writing reports for the Communist Party in Brazil, describing the style and the activities of Uruguayan artists that were representing Uruguay in the 6th Sao Paulo Biennial. And well, she is organizing a trip to the Soviet Union in 1947, and the Argentine researcher Georgina Glusman affirms that she traveled and that there is work of her in the GDR, Romania, China, and Cuba. Until now, I don't know studies about Uruguayan artists exiled in the GDR. And when they took the coup d'etat took place in Uruguay, the Communist Party was proscribed and began to act underground. Even so, there are a lot of controversies about the position of the Communist Party in Uruguay. These are works of Maria Carmen Portela that I show fast, but the themes of victory, star, the pigeon are very much connected with the iconography of the left. And she was also with Gesualdo in Cuba. Gesualdo was the organizer of the educational programs, alphabetization program in Cuba. And this is a portrait that Portela did. Concerning the artistic relations after the coup d'etat, it is important the development of the male art and the connections that artists like Padin, Clemente Padin, had with male artists from Germany. And this is the campaign for the freedom of Caravaggio and Uruguay that were in prison several months, conducted by Robert Reffelt. Here is the same image, bigger, that was found in archives in Dresden. And participating also of this campaign was Guillermo Deisler, a Chilean exile artist. And it is interesting, well, the materials that Clemente Padin had in his archive and how he referred to Robert Redfeld as a pioneer in the male art, someone that connected artists at the GDR and able to deal with a big male network that were connecting the countries of East Europe and Latin America, organizing historic exhibitions at the Arcade Galleries and AP Gallery between 1975 and 1979, and supporting the Decentralized Congress of Male Art in 1986. Then he also narrates in his blog that thanks his friend Volker Hamann. In 1984, Padin went to the GDR, to Germany with the DAAD fellowship, and from there, with the help of Volker Hamann, crossed to East Berlin, where find a lot of artists. There you can find the names. He said that he was trying to cook a barbecue, which was not possible. But artists brought at this encounter a lot of works, and Padin promised to exhibit them, and this is the folder of the exhibition. No, apparently all these works are at the foundation Bertolt Brecht. I wrote to the foundation. I didn't receive an answer yet, but this is an example of GDR artists exhibiting in Latin America. And well, the words of Padin towards Riffel are very eloquent and about his ideological position against capitalism, and also able to see the limitations of socialism, no? And in terms of public freedoms. Also, there are testimonies about the strategies that East European countries were using, and even East German artists, to circumvent censorship and control, they were knowing that they were being tapped and steam open, they inserted carbon paper into envelopes to record traces of tampering. And that the postcards and letters and envelopes were covered for stamps that were encoding meanings using or similar to the underground art of Russian samizdat. Then this is important now to reconstruct which were the strategies. Well, this is a postcard from the Padin archive. And going to Chile, it's very important to underline the protection that the dictatorship had from the Federal German Embassy, protecting colonial dignidad that during many decades was a place for torture in Chile, and accepting not too many exiled Chileans and in a very slow rhythm. And on the opposite, the GDR find in Chile a central place for developing a policy, a foreign policy concerning Latin America. Then the GDR provide asylum to many political activists and cultural militants. 3,000 Chileans were living in the GDR and trying also to address the problems of the refugees through institutions. And East Berlin was also involved in the rescue operation of the General Secretary of the Chilean Socialist Party, Carlos Altamirano, through the Stasi, bringing him to safety in Europe. And also it's remarkable that the fact that in the GDR they have less movement, less freedom for movement. And there were two initiatives. The first in 1971 to create the Museo de la Solidaridad, and after the coup d'etat, the Museum of Resistance. Then if you scroll down in the collection, you can see that the only East European country represented is Poland. But if you go to Cuba, you will find representations of artists from other East countries like Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, but you will not find any artists from the GDR. Then
unfortunately, it's not information about what happened with this donation, no? But there are not works founded in the collection of the Museum of de la Solidaridad. And one of the articulating figures of the cultural scene by Chilean exile artists in the GDR and in East Europe countries was the figure of Guillermo Deisler, who was arrested with some other professors at the University of Antofagasta, Chile in 1974, 1975, with the help of the cultural attaché of France. He arrived to Paris, but he couldn't find a job. Then he went to the GDR, were in contact with the director Heinz Uwehaus. He began to develop masks, costumes, and created scenographies for theater plays. One of Neruda was the first, but in between May 1974 to 1986, he lived in Plovdiv in Bulgaria, from where he was continuously traveling to the GDR to continue this work with theater. He has a presence as a representative from Bulgaria in the CAIC Center, then with exhibitions, and this is the documentation. He was articulating the postcard exhibition América Latina Ahora, Latin America Now, and this is the invitation postcard he sent to Vigo in La Plata in Argentina, and this is the back of this card. But in 1985, he moved to Halle,
And this is an image of his studio, participating in several exhibitions of theater, visual poetry, and in connection with the artist Carla Sasche, he organized the first visual poetry exhibition in the GDR. And in 1989, he concluded his international mail art project, Feathers from All Over the World for My Own Flight. And then Deisler is a central figure. This is documentation of exhibitions in Halle. Another important figure is Cecilia Boyser, a visual artist. She was also the wife of a Skarmeta writer, but she was very important also traveling through different countries. She moved to Berlin, West Berlin in 1975, where she was a translator, teacher, curator. And in 1983, she organized, these are the paintings by Cecilia. She organized this exhibition, Chilean artists in and out of Chile. And it's an exhibition that was traveling through several countries of East Europe, but not to the GDR. And then this was 1983, and it was the same year that Lotte Rosenfeld, a Chilean artist, did this film performance proposition for in between cross limit spaces. It has two parts, one crossing the border between Chile and Argentina, and the other crossing the border between RFA and RDA in Berlin, crossing the wall, crossing the tunnel. We have to remember that Chile and Argentina were almost in war in 1978, and that during the Malvinas War, Chile provided strategic support to England. Then the first part of the video began with the Cordillera, the tunnel, where she repeated an action she began in 1979 to cross the lines of the pavement with white lines, making crosses or signs plus. She repeated this action in Los Angeles, in Washington in 1982, and the third time was in the tunnel. And then she traveled to Germany for personal reasons, but it was also the exhibition organized by Cecilia where Lotte was participating. And then she made this photo. The photo was made by Cecilia, where in the checkpoint is Lotte standing up, making a cross between her body and the line. We have to remember that Pinochet and Videla were friends, that the Condor plan articulated by the CIA in 1974 was creating a logistic between the dictatorships, providing information and capturing prisoners from Chile, in Argentina, and in different countries, articulating the repression. And it was a time also when in Argentina in 1983, the dictatorship ends with the beginning of the democratic government of Raúl Alfonsín. Another figure that is important concerning the presence of Chileans in both Berlins and Germanys is Darío Quiñones. He was he went to Berlin being a teenager. He studied there, and he was someone that can cross freely from West to East Berlin. The European Union organized 3 photography exhibitions, one in Hamburgo, another in Potsdam, and another in the NGBK Gallery, that is the same gallery where it was organized the exhibition of women artists. And it is a gallery where it were organized a lot of exhibitions of Latin American artists. Then here are some photos. This is the exhibition on Mexico that was organized in 1978 in this exhibition place. And after traveling also from East European countries, the catalog of the exhibition about photography organized by Quiñones, and in this NGBK gallery, the exhibition of the Chilean photographers in 1986. This is the flyer of the other exhibition organized in Germany. Concerning Argentina, the situation is very conflicted with the GDR. Concerning FRG, the economic relation between federal Germany and Argentinian dictatorship was very strong. Mercedes-Benz was making very good business with the dictators. Germany didn't make any action with the German sociologist Elisabeth Kassemann disappear. And it was just with Malvinas war from the alignment of Europe with England that Germany condemned the Argentinian dictatorship. But we have to remember in 1978, during the World Cup in Argentina, it was the Hans Ulrich Rudel, a Nazi aviator decorated by Hitler, that it was working, advising President Videla. And when the team, the soccer team arrived to Argentina, they were in the Air Force camp, and Argentina Air Force was on charge of the dead flights that dropped missing prisoners alive in the Rio de la Plata. Then the German soccer team was used to whitewash the image of the dictatorship. Until 1998, Germany was selling weapons to Argentina, and with the rise of the Green Party, this policy changed. On the other hand, the GDR was following the lines of Moscow, which did not condemn the Argentine military dictatorship for considering that those who were in government, General Videla, represented the soft wing among the armed forces. We have also to consider that it's 1976, while the coup d'etat in Uruguay and Chile were in 1973. It is a different time. And the alignment with the dictatorship also had to do because the condemnation of the American President Jimmy Carter. Then the Soviet Union decided to block any condemnation of the dictatorship in the United Nations. And the dictatorship also has commercial relations with the Soviet Union. This is an action because Jorge Glusberg, the director and founder of the CAIC, was in prison for a short time. Then Klaus Groh made this mail action asking for the liberation. Is some relationship between the GDR and CAIC. Well, Katarzyna Sidlak is a Polish art historian that developed the most consistent studies on the relationships between the CAIC and Eastern Europe. In an article entitled Towards Globalized Latin America, the self-invention of the CAIC Art and Communication Center from a trans-modern and trans-regional perspective, she analyzed how the CAIC, during the dictatorship of Lanusse, established a connection with Poland through Sergei Grotowski, the Polish theater that visited Argentina in 1971. But as far as I have been able to investigate, the CAIC had no ties to the GDR. I hope new information appears that allowed to reconstruct the connection. It is interesting, this letter that Jorge Glusberg sent to Walter Zanini, that was the director of the Museum of Contemporary Art, where he said that I understand that you don't want an exhibition of Latin American artists because their works are very much involved in politics. We have to think that this is 1973. Argentina is in a democratic government, but Brazil is under a dictatorship. Then instead of offering these very committed Latin American artists, he offered 4 festivals with artists from 4 socialist countries: Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. And he writes, the proposed works are absolutely incomplete, non-political, are not against, not in favor. Because of security reasons, they avoid these themes. Then this is interesting. An important connection is mail art, and this is the exhibition Novísima Poesía at the Di Tella Institute in Buenos Aires, organized by Vigo, Antonio Vigo from La Plata. In 1975, Vigo and Horacio Zavala organized the last Arte Correo 75 exhibition at the Arte Nuevo Gallery in Buenos Aires. And there are 15 German artists, and at least Robert Riffel was from East Germany. This is the catalog. It's interesting because they present as the last exhibition, but they explain the anti-capitalist conditions of the mail art and the concept of long-distance communications that propose. And here are some of the German artists now listed, and also recognized in this book, in Networking the Block, the exhibition organized by Klaus Groh, Aktuelle Kunst in Osteuropa, but and compiling and recognizing also the book, edited by Klaus Groh, that it was an important publication for articulating the network between male artists. And these are Mathias sent to the Arcade Gallery, postcards by Antonio Vigo and Graciela Gutierrez Marx, with this common logic of sending separate cards with numbers that in the exhibition space should be put together, creating another image, which is interesting to analyze in detail. This image very much centered on bodies, fragments of bodies, and images like from Africa. Then it is very interesting to be able, the image is not allowing to make a detailed analysis, but this is something to develop. It were sent in 1978, the year of the World Cup. Then here is the stamp. And it is interesting because in the same Arcade Gallery were found these cards that are an action of mail art by Monica Mayer, central artist on feminist artistic movement in Latin America. And then this work is represented in several museums, and this is a very ironic work about how you define yourself from your sexual interests. Well, here a photo of Jorge Glusberg in Poland, or in East countries, East European countries. And this is the last material I find by the archive of Anne-Marie Enrich. She was born in Darmstadt in 1912 and died in Buenos Aires in 2015. She came to Argentina being a teenager. Her father was participating in the First World War. He was a violin player. They came to Argentina and she began to make photography as a way to live. You have to consider that many German women were working in photography and contribute enormously to the development of modern photography. Grete Stern will be another name. But this in the context in her archive, I find the photographies of the 1st of May in Berlin, and photographies also of her presence in Dresden the same year, 1983. DDR, Germany, and images of a parade of the 1st of May in Berlin. Then you can see all the red flags and the portrait of Lenin. What I presented is are just some materials that are the tip of an iceberg that will surely become more and more complex in the future, revealing other plots of this relationship between artists from Latin America and the GDR. Thank you.